Okay, so welcome to our medicine admission tutor panel. I'm really pleased that we've got colleagues from around the local area to come and talk to us, in addition to our own admissions tutor, Margaret Barnes-Davies here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you in just a moment, but a couple of housekeeping things for you. The chat, as always, I'm sure is going to be absolutely crazy. So any questions you do have, please make sure to put them into the Q&A box. We will try our best to kind of pull questions from the chat, but as I'm sure you're aware, as are we from experience this week, the chat seems to go a mile a minute. So any questions, please do put them into the Q&A rather than in the chat. And I think that's all from housekeeping side of things. So questions, as always, are highly encouraged. This is a great opportunity to learn more about the different universities and what it is they're looking for, but also to obviously help answer any questions you may have from some more admissions people rather than just the mentors you've had in your groups. So that's it from me for the time being. I'm going to pass over to Margaret first to introduce herself and talk a little bit more about the courses at the University of Leicester.
Hi everyone, great to see so many of you, and I really hope that you've been enjoying summer school so far. I'm Margaret Barnes-Davies. I'm the admissions lead at the medical school at the University of Leicester. I also teach on phase 1 of the course. I lead the cardiovascular unit. So the courses that we've got available at Leicester in medicine, we've actually got 2 courses. There is our A100 5-year course. That's our standard medicine course where you need 3 A's to get in. Typically, and then we've also got a six-year course, medicine with a foundation year, and that's aimed at people from what we call a widening participation or widening access background. So there's certain other criteria you need to meet to get into that course, and then its entry requirements are a bit lower, 3 B's at A level. So that's the 2 medicine courses that we've got. And then at the University of Leicester, there's also allied health courses available as well. So there's midwifery with leadership and MSc in midwifery with leadership. So that's a 4-year course, 4-year nursing courses. So that's nursing with leadership. And then there's physiotherapy, a 3-year course, and operational department practitioner, and starting up newly, there's also radiography as well. So a number of different allied health courses available as well, if you're thinking along those lines. So that's what's available at Leicester. I'll hand over to someone else to tell you what's available at their institution.
Gordon, did you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Gordon Dent. I'm Director of Admissions for Medicine at the University of Keele. I'm a Senior Lecturer in Pharmacology, so I teach pharmacology to students in years 1 to 3 of medicine at Keele, and I'm a problem-based learning tutor and also teach on various other courses. So similarly to Leicester, we have a standard 5-year programme for medicine, and we have a 6-year programme that is specifically for students from disadvantaged backgrounds, where again we take people in with lower academic requirements. The arrangement of the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences at Keele is a little bit unusual. So the School of Medicine has within it the medicine programmes and public health, paramedic science, and unusually social work. Our faculty also has a School of Nursing and Midwifery that does nursing and midwifery courses, obviously, a School of Pharmacy and Bioengineering, which does pharmacy and pharmaceutical science with business, and cell and tissue engineering. And our School of Allied Health Professions does physiotherapy, sport and rehabilitation science, and radiography.
Brilliant, thank you, Gordon. Should we go to Claire next?
Hi, so my name's Claire Ray, and I work in the College of Medical and Dental Sciences at the University of Birmingham, where I lead on outreach and widening participation. And we have 2 medicine programmes in the College of Medical and Dental Sciences. We have the standard 5-year undergraduate programme where we take about 340 students a year, and then slightly differently to Keele and Leicester, we have a graduate entry programme. So that's a degree that you would enter after you've taken an undergraduate degree, and there's about 40 places available on that programme. Also in the College of Medical and Dental Sciences, we have some allied health professional courses. So we have dentistry and dental hygiene and therapy over in our dental school. We have nursing and pharmacy. And then also in our College of Life and Environmental Sciences, we have physiotherapy and social work. Probably should have also said at the beginning, I also teach on our undergraduate and graduate medical programmes. In the 1st and 2nd year on the undergraduate programme, I lead the cardiovascular and respiratory modules, and on the graduate entry programme, I work on a module called supply and demand, which is just a different way of saying cardiovascular and respiratory system. So that's a little bit about Birmingham, and I'll pass over to Mandy to introduce herself.
So hello everyone, it's great to be here. I'm from the University of Nottingham. That's the university behind me, and I'm Director of Admissions here at the university for our medicine courses. I'm also a GP, so on a Monday and Tuesday I normally work as a GP, and the other 3 days I work at the university, mainly in admissions, but I also look after our final year students as they graduate and start their jobs and help them through that process. So at Nottingham, we have a 5-year medicine course with about 200 places, and we have a foundation year course for students who don't meet the academic requirements of the 5-year course but do meet our widening access criteria. And we have about 27 places on our foundation year course, and all of those students normally move through to the 5-year course without having to be interviewed or anything else happening. We do have a graduate entry course as well for students who've done any degree. They need a 2-2 in any degree, and they can then apply to study medicine on our 4-year graduate entry course. In addition to that, we've been working with the University of Lincoln, and we have a brand new medical school at Lincoln, and we have a 5-year course there with the same structure and the same entry criteria as the course at Nottingham, and we also have a foundation year course at Lincoln. So other courses that you might be interested in at Nottingham, in our School of Health Sciences, we have nursing, midwifery, physiotherapy, sports rehab, and they also run a foundation year course for the health sciences as well. And we work very closely with pharmacology. You can study pharmacology and pharmaceutical sciences here. And we have 2 other courses that are run by the School of Medicine, one of which is Cancer Sciences, which is all about cancer, if that's something that you're really interested in, and Medical Physiology and Therapeutics. So there's quite a variety of options available for you, both within medicine, subjects that are allied to medicine in other health professions, and subjects which are maybe not so face-to-face with patients, but very closely linked to working in the health service. So who's next? I'll hand back to Nicola. Do you want to say who else might be going?
Thanks, Mandy. That you are the last one of the list. So we have, as expected, had a lot of questions already coming in. So I will put the first couple ones to the panel. So keep them coming in. You might get a typed response, you might get a live response, but we will get around to you. So the first question then is around interviews for this year. So how are you going to be doing interviews for 2022 entry, virtual or in real life? I'm assuming they might all be the same answer for this one. But Margaret, should we start with you and Leicester?
Okay, so at Leicester, we're planning face-to-face interviews, but we're also planning online interviews because we don't know what's going to happen. So we think that we really need to do both. Face-to-face interviews have a huge advantage in that you get to see the medical school. Also, we can actually interview more people in one day if we do face-to-face interviews. We'd like to get back to it. We really enjoyed having our candidates on campus. They got a tour with medical students on the day, and we give a talk to the parents and such like. So it's really great if we can do that. But we recognise that it could be a little bit risky to do rely on that. So we've actually got a backup plan of going to online interviews as well. We're also going to offer for the first time our international applicants online interviews, just as a matter of course, because international travel could be a real problem. So we're essentially set up to do both. I don't know who wants to go next. Mandy?
Yep. So we've made the decision that we're going to be online. That's a fairly recent decision. So previous events I've been saying we haven't made up our mind, but we've decided we're going to go online for home and international students for Lincoln and for Nottingham. Shall I hand over to Claire?
Yeah, so the same as Nottingham at Birmingham. So we've also taken the decision to have the interviews online, but there are lots of opportunities for students to visit the medical school and the campus. So look out for information about open days, but also there will be applicant visit days as well to give students the opportunity to meet staff and students, and also be able to see the facilities that they'll have access to if they study at the University of Birmingham. We just wanted the certainty of letting students know exactly how they were going to be interviewed when they applied. So that's why we've taken that decision.
So at Keele, we've also taken the decision to do online interviews again this year because of the risk that there may be restrictions on room occupation and travel at some point through the winter. So rather than risk having to change the way we do the interviews partway through, we're doing online interviews from the start. We are gradually reintroducing in-person open days. So for our next open day in August, it will be possible to do campus visits, although we will still be doing the talks online. So people need to make sure they don't come onto campus on the day on which we're doing the talks.
Brilliant, thank you. So a bit of a varied response there. So definitely a good question to ask to kind of check what practices are. And that's the same for you apply anywhere else as well. Do make sure you ask those questions. So the next one is a completely different track, folks. So apologies for the complete tangent. But questions come in to say, can you apply the year after if you're not given an offer the first time you apply? So I guess the question is whether or not people can reapply after not getting in. Gordon, should we start with you this time?
Right, so it will depend a little bit on what your circumstances are. If you didn't get in this year because you didn't have any offers, then it's fine to apply again the next year. There may be restrictions in terms of applying to places you already applied this year. So, for example, we would usually say in a normal year, if we've interviewed you 1 year and you've been rejected at that point, then we wouldn't accept an application the following year. So you'd need to look out for specific exceptions like that. If you don't get a place this year because you don't meet the grade requirements of an offer, then again, you need to look carefully because some places won't accept resits of A-levels. Others are quite happy about it. Others will place restrictions. So again, what Keele would say is if you haven't met grade requirements at the first time of doing your A-levels, we won't let you apply while you're redoing them. You would have to wait until you'd completed them the second time and had your grades in hand. So you do need to look carefully at how different medical schools handle those things.
Brilliant. Has anyone got anything they want to add to that at all?
Yeah, just to say that Nottingham, we will allow students to reapply if they've been interviewed, and we will also accept some students with resits. I would suggest, as Gordon said, you need to check carefully on each university's website because we all might be slightly different, but we do accept students who are resitting A-levels as long as they've got an A already, well, as long as they've got ABB already with an A in biology or chemistry.
Well, Margaret, I think you had your hand up as well then.
Yeah, so if a student has already been interviewed by us, we'll only re-interview them if they apply the next year, if their interview score was within 10% of our lowest score for getting an offer. So you have to check your interview score. We publish the stats every year of what interview scores and what scores you needed to get to interview, etc. All the admission statistics is on our website. So if you have been interviewed once, then you need to check that. If you're rejected before interview and you've got the grades, then that's absolutely no problem. And if you apply with achieved A levels with the grades we want, then providing those A levels are done within 2 years, we don't even score your application, providing you've not got a Ucat score in the lowest 2 deciles. If you're applying and you're retaking your A levels, we need you to have A, B, B at the first stage. Or if your A levels are lower than that, then you need to get the grades first and not apply with predicted grades. So yeah, it's best to look on websites because we're all slightly different.
Excellent, thank you. So linked to that then is a question about gap years. So how do you view gap years?
I'm happy to start. I think gap years are a very good idea. I think people gain a lot of confidence and experience. Normally, I know things have been slightly more challenging with COVID, but usually people have very good reasons. If they want to take a gap year, it can be they want to get a job and earn some money. Maybe they've got health reasons why they can't start straight away, or they may have some plan that they've got to do something that they really want to do. So I'm very aware that students have very personal reasons usually why they want to take a gap year. So we ask students to let us know if they want to defer, usually by a deadline of whatever the Ucat deadline for decisions is. So in normal year that might be the first week in May, if they want to defer, and they wouldn't be disadvantaged in any way if they want to defer.
Yes, similarly at Birmingham, up to about 10% of our students actually take a gap year, and you're certainly not disadvantaged in any application that you make. There is some level of expectation that you will continue activity through that gap year, demonstrating, commitment to society. So maybe through volunteering or working, traveling, and you should reflect that in your personal statement when you apply, if you're applying sort of with your grades during that gap year. But absolutely, it wouldn't disadvantage you in any way to take a gap year.
Gordon or Margaret, anything to add to those?
I just agree with that we're very happy for people to take a gap year. Our cut-off for requesting deferred entry is 31st of April. Or you can just apply when you apply for Ucat, apply for deferred entry. But yeah, really happy to accept that. And we recognise that students often learn quite a lot through that gap year and arrive at university really prepared to start their studies.
Yeah, so very similarly, you can apply for deferred entry on your Ucat application, but if you decide after applying that you want to defer, Keel's cut off it for requesting that and not getting any awkward questions is the end of May. If you decide after that you want to defer, then we wouldn't give you a final decision until August.
Brill, thank you. So hopefully what is a relatively simple question now for you all. How many applicants do you accept for medicine? Let's see how well you know your numbers.
So I can start.
You're unmuted.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just to give you sort of a fuller picture, we interview about 1,200 home applicants. We make about 800 offers, and we have around about 340 places for home applicants. There's some additional places for students from overseas, but for the home applicants, it's around about 340.
Anybody else keen on their numbers? Is everyone furiously typing away?
So I'm just thinking it's not quite so simple. So I'm going to go for what our home places are. Okay, so on our 5-year medicine course, we've got about 200 places on our home course at Nottingham, and we've got about 65 places on our course at Lincoln for our 5-year course. Then for our foundation year course, which is our 6-year course, we've got 27 places at Nottingham and 15 places at Lincoln. And then for our graduate entry course, we've got about 100 home places.
So at Keele, we have in a normal year 164 places on the 5-year course and up to 20 places on the foundation year, so the widening participation route. The issue there is students progressing from foundation year onto medicine take away numbers from the places for the 5-year course. So if we had, say, 12 people progressing from the foundation year, we'd take 12 fewer into year 1 of the 5-year course.
Yeah, so at Leicester we've got 272 home places on the 5-year course, but similarly those that progress from our foundation year take numbers away from that. And also we allow internal transfer as well, so from a number of courses like biological sciences, any of the medical sciences, psychology, natural sciences, there's this competitive transfer from year 1. So they apply to transfer, and we can give up to 20 places through that. So that would take away from those numbers coming in, applying that year as well. But those decisions are made kind of around A-level results time, seeing the places that we've got left. Our 6-year course, we've got 35 places in all. We reserve up to 25 of those places for students who live in the East Midlands. That's because there's a kind of scholarship goes with that, and the benefactor wanted to promote medicine within the East Midlands. And so that's why 25 places are reserved for that. But we will recruit more than 10 nationally if we can't fill those 25 East Midlands places.
Excellent, thank you. So I've got a couple of questions to follow now, all about entry requirements and things. So the first one is about GCSE requirements. So if you've got one grade in your GCSEs that doesn't meet the criteria, but your A-levels and everything else is fine, can they still apply? Mandy, you're shaking your head at me, so do you want to articulate that?
Yeah, I think it's really tricky, isn't it? And it feels like we're being so inflexible, but we have a cut-off, and we have a line, and so if you don't meet our minimum GCSE requirements for the courses, then we wouldn't consider your application. I try and make that very clear to people, and it should be clear on the website, because it upsets me. It's very distressing for us on the admissions side, and for applicants who apply in a year who don't meet the criteria, and then they're rejected at the very first stage of the selection process. So I would, that's definitely the position at Nottingham. You need to meet our admissions criteria, both for GCSEs and anything else that we have. Just to say, we are not using predicted A-levels, so this year onwards. So you do not have to meet any A-level predictions, but you do need to meet the GCSE requirements.
Is it different for anybody else? Anybody else want to add to that from Mandy?
So we have started accepting resits in English language and maths GCSEs, which we never used to do before. So if you don't meet our requirements in English language and maths, which are the 6 we require in our for our standard 5-year course, and a 5 for the medicine with a foundation year course. If you don't meet those, you can resit. The other thing I would say is that we used to say that you had to have A's in your science GCSEs, and you do if you're applying with predicted A-levels. But if you're applying with achieved A-levels, and within 2 years of your GCSEs, you've achieved chemistry and biology at A-level in an A in, as we require, then we can overlook the lower result in the GCSEs. But you have to effectively have met our minimum criteria. So you've exceeded it by getting the A-levels, but we would only accept that if you'd completed those A-levels within 2 years of the GCSEs.
Gordon or Claire want to come in on that question at all?
Nothing really to add. Keele, our GCSE requirements are relatively low anyway. The things we're completely inflexible on are maths and English language. So we get into a lot of arguments with people applying as graduates who are saying because they've got a degree, then their GCSEs in maths and English shouldn't be important, but they are. So the advice we try to give people is, if you don't have at least a 6 in maths and English GCSE, redo them during 6th form.
Great, thank you. So another kind of let me just find the question again, sorry, it's a follow-up question. If someone did a GCSE language exam in October, as in 2020, they felt a teacher assessed grade award in the summer was unfair and we got higher, will the October grade be counter official grade? I mean, obviously, Margaret, you just said that about Leicester, but everybody else, I think we've got nodding of heads there. So yeah, happy to take the resits.
The autumn sits are a first sit, and we view them as a first sit. They're not a resit. So although we don't normally take resits for GCSEs, the autumn sits would be a first sit.
Yeah, similarly, we would not consider that autumn sit to be a resit. That would be a first sit. And I should say that when we allow resits, we score your GCSEs. It's actually the first sit that we score, although you can resit your GCSEs to meet our minimum requirements. But an autumn sit, when you've had a teacher assessed grade or a centre assessed grade, is not a resit, it is a first sit.
Perfect. And on the subject of resitting, do you consider resitting of year 12? Claire, should we start with you this time?
So as with extenuating circumstances, it's always worth emailing the admissions team to just check through, because they will take personal circumstances into consideration. But the main consideration is that all of the 3 A levels that you're going to be counting, if you like, for your application are taken in the same 2 years. So you're taking all of the exams at the same time, essentially. But it is really worth, you know, running that any particular circumstances past the admissions tutors for that one.
This is something that varies quite a bit among medical schools. So some will say explicitly you must have 3 A levels from a single sitting. That is, those 3 grades must come from exams that were all done at the same time. As Claire says, what we would say to people who are going to take more than 2 years to complete 3 A levels is they must contact us before they apply to say what the circumstances were, because generally we won't allow people to apply if they're in a 3rd year of A-level study. Now, if you contact us beforehand and send us supporting evidence to say you had to stop year 12 very early because of family circumstances or health condition or whatever, then we can take that to our admissions committee. If you ask us a week before the deadline, we won't have time to do that. And if you apply without approval, there's no guarantee that we're not automatically going to reject you.
Yeah, I'd agree with what's been said so far. If you're taking 3 years, contact the university, tell them in good time and ask them, because you might need mitigation. In our case, we might accept it over 3 years, but you might get treated differently to someone who'd done their A levels over 2 years, in that we would score your application instead as well. But if you've got mitigation, then that might not be the case. So it's really important that you contact any university that you're thinking of applying to if you're taking A levels over 3 years.
Mandy, towing the party line.
Yeah, I think you need to I would agree, you need to contact us before you apply. Some people can have some very difficult situations. Their school could have closed. You know, there's a school near us that's closed at the end of year 12. So all of those students would have had to move school, and you could imagine that perhaps that would mean that they had to change their A-level board, or, you know, A levels that they were no longer able to take. So please do inquire first before you apply.
Brilliant. And again, so we're going to link on to another sort of A-level type question. But due to the COVID situation, most people's A-level potential can't be seen in their AS grade, which is used for predicted grades normally. So will you be more lenient?
We stopped using AS grades when the A levels went linear. We don't use AS grades at all, and haven't done for a few years.
We don't use AS grades at all either.
Same at Birmingham.
I think the question there was about if schools are using ASs to base predictions on. Can you repeat the question, actually?
Yeah, so it says, due to the COVID situation, most people's A-level potential can't be seen in their AS grades used for predicted. So will you be more lenient? So I'm guessing they're just questioning about, obviously, leniency due to the COVID situation and perhaps disrupted schooling, and obviously grades not having taken exams and things.
AS grades we wouldn't use in selection, because only students in Wales and a very limited number of schools in England have got them. If your schools are using AS grades to base predictions on, then A, you need to look at how medical schools you're thinking of applying to use predicted grades, and B, you need to have a conversation with your school. What your school is predicting for you is not our responsibility.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's pretty much the same across the board then, isn't it? Okay,
we're not using predicted A-level grades. We don't use predictions for A-levels at all as part of our selection process. So it's not part of what we're looking at.
At Birmingham, they are looked at, but they don't make up part of the score for selection for interview. So there is a requirement for a certain level of prediction, but you don't get any more credit if you're predicted 3 A stars, for example, rather than predictions of AAB.
We're similar to Birmingham in that respect, in that the predictions do not count in the score, and we'll also consider you if you're predicted, say 2 A's and a B, even though we require 3 A's. There's certain groups that our requirements are lower, such as you're doing realising opportunities, or our own Access Leicester Medicine programme, in which case it would be an A and 2 B's is what we require anyway. So obviously predicted grades for those students would be 3 B's in that case. So what the predictions we're looking at are a bit lower than what we're requiring. And like I say, we only just look at them, we don't score them.
excellent. I hope that's cleared things up.
Just to give the broader picture, that there are places where you need to be really careful with this. So Exeter is the most obvious one, and Queen Mary's, University of London as well to some extent, where predicted grades are the main thing on which they select for interview. Whereas most of the people speaking here, it's not going to be a major factor. So do make sure you research that very carefully.
I think that's a good message to take home regardless today. I think it's about that research. We're obviously going to do our best to answer as many questions as we can, but I am picking out the questions that each of the 4 institutions can give their own take on. So for those of you answering very specific questions about the individual universities, I would really recommend going onto their websites. Obviously, I know Leicester's website quite well, and we've got so much information on there about the application process, how it all works. We've got stats from previous years, and I'm sure the other universities are exactly the same as well. So do make sure you go onto websites and do some research of your own, because we might not get around to all the individual questions for the individual universities. So looking at grades again, for most medical unis, would A star AB be valued similarly to 3 A's? And would you therefore consider an application just as likely to be accepted as somebody with the 3 A's as if you had some kind of different scoring? So does it make a difference, basically, whether you get the 3 A's or whether you get an equivalent? Do you take equivalencies?
We accept A star AB as equivalent to 3 A's, providing you've got an A in either chemistry or biology. So you've got to have an A in either chemistry or biology, and then A star AB is fine. Or for the foundation year, ABC would be fine as well.
Keele were a bit less flexible than that. We used to have a similar approach to that. What we say now is the requirement is 3 A's. If you don't have 3 A's, you haven't formally met the conditions of the offer. Now, in a normal year, we would expect to have a few places unfilled, and the people who would be at the front of the queue to get those places would be people who got A star A, B. And we wouldn't make a distinction on what the A star was in or what the B was in. This year we're likely to be less flexible. The other thing I would say is if you're applying with achieved grades, we wouldn't accept an application from someone with A star AB. Other places probably would.
Claire, Mandy, anything to add to those?
So we're not using predicted A levels in the selection process, so it wouldn't match at that stage. When students actually, unless they're applying with achieved A levels, in which case we would expect 3 A's for the 5-year course and a contextual offer of 2 A's and a B for the 5-year course, and 2 B's and a C for the foundation year course if they're applying with A levels. On A level results day, we'd be looking for 3 A's. But as Gordon has said, in any normal year, there might be a few places available, and students who've got A star AB would be the first ones that we looked at in what we would consider our sort of near miss process.
Yeah, and very similar at Birmingham.
So again, a slightly linked question with that one. Are students at any kind of advantage to take 4 A levels rather than just 3? No, I think that says it all. I don't even think anyone is speak for that one. That's fine. Thank you.
See Claire shaking her head, because Birmingham used to make an adjusted offer if you had 4 A levels, and I wasn't sure whether that's still the case.
Not the case, no, just the 3.
Okay, so a question that has been...
Nicola, it might be worth saying, it's really wise advice for people to think carefully about taking 4 A levels, because I think for many places it wouldn't advantage them. Might be different for Oxford and Cambridge. But for many places, it wouldn't advantage them. So if actually they're putting their 3 A's at risk, or whatever the requirements are that they're aiming for by taking 4, it's definitely not a good decision to take 4. But obviously you in your own situation, you need to think about that and discuss that with your teachers as to whether it is likely to impact on what you're going to get in your 3 best subjects.
I think that'd be the same across the board, wouldn't it? No matter what subject as well, it's about the 3 best A levels you can get. Yeah. Certainly the majority of universities will never ask for 4 A levels. And I think these days, a lot of universities ask for grades as opposed to Ucat score as well, which obviously means that it is actually the grades you get are the most important, as you say, Mandy, rather than having the number of A levels. Margaret, sorry, do you have something to add to that as well?
No, I was just going to say, over the number of years that I've been doing admissions, and I've looked at applications from graduates, and they've done, you see them with 4 A levels and they've got like an A and 3 Bs, and you think, if you'd just done 3 A levels, I bet you would have got 3 A's. They've just overstretched themselves. So don't be tempted to overstretch yourself.
Yeah, brilliant. EPQ, I had a question about the EPQ. Do any of you accept EPQ? Would you lower grades for EPQ?
So I've already replied in the Q&A that Keele will accept AAB with an A or an A star in EPQ. Sheffield will do that as well. I think Holyyoke might, but there aren't many places that do.
We don't require it. It's not part of the offer at Leicester, but I will say, come results day, if you've got 2 A's and a B and you've done well in an EPQ, it might make a difference. But there's no kind of guarantee on that. But I would say it's a really useful thing to do, and I think a lot of students enjoy doing it, and a lot of times they might mention their EPQ in their personal statement. Now, we don't routinely use personal statements, but it's something that they can talk about, and they might even talk about it at interview. One of our stations kind of assesses the types of things you do in your personal statement, you put in your personal statement, and it might come up in that. So it's not a bad thing to do. It is actually a really good thing to do. And I think it's a better thing to do than a 4th A level. It gives you really good skills in writing, but it's not something we actually ask for. It's not something that forms part of our offer at all. So good to do, but not required.
That's the same at Birmingham as well.
Well, that was the best answer so far, Claire. Very succinct. I like it. So we've talked about obviously 3 A levels. We've talked about chemistry, I think, so far. So I've got 2 questions that are very linked. So do any of you not require chemistry? And the second question linked to that then is, does it matter? Will it make any difference to you what the 3rd A level is in?
Can I answer that? We've moved to saying biology or chemistry, and one other A level from biology, chemistry, psychology, maths or physics. So basically 2 science A levels. And then your 3rd A level can be whatever you want it to be, providing it's not something like general studies, critical thinking, or one of those very sort of general vague subjects. So if you want to do drama, if you want to do English literature or history or whatever as a 3rd A level, we're really very, very happy for that.
So sorry, Margaret, can I just follow up very quickly with your answer? Just the question that was asked is quite a specific one. So biology or chemistry, but they have to have a second science subject, and then the third doesn't matter.
Yeah,
okay.
So it could be biology, psychology and drama, for example.
Thank you. Sorry, Gordon, I think you're about to talk.
Very, very similar at Keele. So we require chemistry or biology, and then a second subject from a defined list, which is biology, chemistry, maths or further maths or statistics, physics, psychology or economics, which is the unusual thing in our requirements. Third subject can be any current A-level. General studies and critical thinking A-levels don't exist anymore, so there's not a specific exclusion for those.
Mandy?
Yeah, so it doesn't matter what the third subject is. It can be anything, but we currently ask for biology and chemistry at A-level.
And at Birmingham, we're the same as Nottingham, but similarly to Leicester, that third one can't be general studies or critical thinking, but absolutely welcome at any of the other A-levels.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so GCSEs, sorry folks, we're back on GCSEs again. In light of obviously what happened with COVID and grade inflation, I've got a student who wants to know, have you made any changes to scoring systems because of GCSE grade inflation in 2020? It's a big question, isn't it? Anyone brave enough to answer the question about grade inflation?
Okay, we've changed our scoring system, but it wasn't primarily driven by the situation last summer. Previously, we had a separate scoring system for our 5-year and our 6-year courses, and we felt that sometimes people didn't know. It made it quite difficult for people who weren't sure which course to apply for and how we scored, and we thought it would be more straightforward. For example, if someone applies for the wrong course, you know, if they apply for the 5-year course, actually they don't meet those requirements, but they meet the requirements of the 6-year course. If we've got the same scoring system for GCSEs for our 5 and 6-year courses, it would make it more straightforward to offer them the course that they actually meet the academic requirements for. So that was our main driver for changing our GCSE scoring system.
We haven't changed ours because we figured that if there is grade inflation, it's still competitive anyway, and we think our scoring system will still work, so it's the same.
Yeah, we haven't changed ours either. We were discussing it, but we figured things were likely to change every year for the foreseeable future, so we didn't think it was worthwhile. It'd be too confusing.
We've had some slight adjustments, just rebalancing, and we look at GCSE results, Ucat, and some contextual information in varying sort of ratios to one another, and there's been a slight shift in those ratios, but we're still looking at GCSEs in the same way. And I've just answered a question actually by typing around not having 9 GCSEs. That would be fine at Birmingham. We only score 7. You just need to look at the individual requirements. But you're not advantaged, you know, if you've got, you know, 12, 13 GCSEs, we're looking at core subjects really. Okay,
great. So on to the next one. So I've just got a question actually that's kind of linked to what we've been talking about before. We've talked about actually the chemistry or biology, but obviously if someone doesn't take chemistry, will there be any kind of disadvantage? I don't know whether they mean in terms of getting into the university, but perhaps also when they start the course, given that it is generally and always has been such a prevalent subject for potential medics to be taking, will there be a disadvantage when they start the course they haven't done chemistry?
So I might start on that one. So I think there is less chemistry involved in the course than there used to be at Leicester. That's not to say it doesn't exist, it is there, but we've always offered a pre-sessional chemistry course anyway, because our graduates never had to have chemistry when we had a graduate entry course. We don't have that graduate entry course now, but now that we've gone to this biology or chemistry, we do offer a pre-sessional, which is just a very short course. It's online now and it's going to stay online. It used to be in person, but we think it'll stay online. And that actually includes some chemistry and some biology in it now, just to kind of get you familiar with things before starting the course so that you don't feel at a disadvantage. There might still be some things that you struggle with a little bit, but we find that we've got such a varied student population, and our students are really good at supporting each other. They're in small groups and they work in small groups, and there's always in the group, there's some that are better at some aspects than others, and I think as a community they just work really well to support each other. So you might struggle a little bit. I think you'd probably struggle more if you hadn't done biology than if you haven't done chemistry. But even then we have some who haven't done biology and manage, maybe struggle a little bit to begin with, but catch up.
There is a lot of history to the chemistry requirement. It's pretty much the case that chemistry is so widely required because it's seen as being a particularly difficult A-level. I think beyond that, there is an issue of, well, there's not very much chemistry in medicine courses. It's a lot harder to learn than the biology stuff that we cover in medicine courses. So it may be, if you haven't studied chemistry before, those bits may take a little bit longer. So understanding things like arterial blood gases requires some knowledge of acid-base equilibria. And if you haven't learned that before, it can be a little bit difficult to grasp. But it's not absolutely essential generally to study chemistry.
Excellent. I'm going to ask a couple more questions around kind of grades and that kind of thing. Then we're going to move on to the next step. I know we've got a lot of questions we're trying to get through here, and obviously students are wondering why they're not being answered, but it's just because we have around about 100 questions still in the box, so bear with us, everybody. Again, another science-based question, but someone wants to, they've done biology but no other science, would they get onto foundation courses? So how's the foundation course differ in entry requirements? Is there any leniency with lack of science, or is it still the same basic requirement?
Can I say there are some gateway courses at other medical schools for students who've not done science A-levels. So although our Nottingham Foundation and Lincoln Foundation course, we expect 2 Bs and a C with B in biology and B in chemistry and C in the 3rd subject. Gordon may know because he's a fountain of knowledge, but there are a couple of medical schools that run gateway courses. Is there anyone left? Thank you.
Manchester left that will run foundation year for people without science A-levels. Cardiff was the other one, but they're abandoning all of their foundation years from next year. In terms of biology being your only science, for Keele that'd be fine because we only require 1 science for entrance foundation year. But again, it's something you'd need to research because it'll be different in different medical schools.
Margaret, what about Leicester's?
Yeah, we need the 2 sciences for our medicine with foundation year. So it's the same subject requirements as for the 5-year course, but lower grades that are required. And so you do need these 2 sciences, but we do often get inquiries from people who say that I wasn't thinking of medicine originally, and I've been doing 3 other A-levels. Can I do another A-level? And sometimes they'll do like a single A-level in 1 year, stay on to do that. And we're very happy, you know, if you've only done 1 science, you've got your 3 A-levels. We usually want you to have the 3 A-levels, the grades that we require anyway, and then take that additional A-level on. So we're happy to consider that if it's something that you've thought about later. The other thing that we have, I've mentioned the internal transfer. So at the moment, our internal transfer says that we require a B in chemistry or biology from the students that are doing year 1 of biological sciences or psychology or whatever. And we'll consider them then. So it's just 1 science we're looking at. And the same with graduates. But then the thing is that you then look into something that's quite far in the future. And so you don't know whether the entry requirements might change. So it might be as well to look at getting the requirements that are needed now. It's a difficult one if you've initially chosen the wrong A-levels, or not the wrong A-levels, but you've made a different choice. It is a difficult one to advise what is the best to do. I think Mandy's got her hand.
I was going to say, I think Newcastle doesn't ask for any specific subjects at A level in terms of 5-year standard courses, but graduate entry is always an option. I know it probably seems like a long way away at the moment to think about doing graduate entry medicine after a first degree, but for example, our graduate entry course, you can apply with a 2-2 in any degree, so you could have a degree in French or history or music or anything, and then do graduate entry medicine. So if you haven't done what would be deemed that the right A levels, or haven't got many options in terms of where to apply, then graduate entry may be an option, or as Margaret said, doing more A levels after you've done your 3 that you might be doing in the first stage.
Just on the subject of graduate entry, that's something I often advise people when they're thinking about medicine, and they think there's going to be a really long route round, but it's not actually that much longer, because if you do 3 years to get a first degree, and then if you get onto one of the 4-year accelerated graduate entry programs, you're getting a BSc and a degree in 7 years. Many of our students will choose to take a year out to intercalate and get a BSc or an MSc taking a year out. So they're taking 6 years. So actually it's not that much longer. So I think it's something that's really worth thinking about, is doing a degree and doing graduate entry.
And can I just double check? I've had a question about the foundation degrees. Do they lead automatically onto the 5-year medical degree? Someone wants to ask about being chosen for the medical degree. But from my knowledge, I wanted to check with you that actually it is just part of the course. It's the first year of the course, essentially. Yeah, brilliant. That's fine.
Unless you're an international student doing our international foundation year, which is a standalone 1-year foundation year for medicine. But the 6-year program, medicine with a foundation year, is a 6-year course. If you meet the progression requirements, you just move seamlessly onto year 1, effectively the 5-year course, join the others on that. And I would imagine it's the same for all the other 6-year programs.
Yeah, the thing to watch out for there is if there are standalone foundation years, they are usually for international students. The other thing to watch out for is the programme offered by Bradford is different. The foundation year there leads on to a clinical sciences degree. There's a limited number of places available for medicine at Sheffield or Hull York for students who've completed that. That's very competitive, so you can't start that foundation year assuming that you're going to get onto the medicine course at Sheffield or Hull York.
Great. I've got 2 more kind of entry requirements ones, and we're going to move on. So someone's asked about IB and whether they're treated any differently from A-level students. And the second question is about contextual offers and what they're given for and what the requirements are for contextual offers.
Shall I start with that one? So absolutely, IB is considered in exactly the same way. The offer is 666 at Birmingham, and 32, in biology, chemistry, and so those are in the higher subjects, including biology and chemistry, and then 32 points in total. So yeah, not penalised in any way. And then at Birmingham, we have a sort of couple of contextual routes. So we have our sort of standard contextual offer that's open to students from all over the country. So we look at the school that you attended for your GCSEs or your A-levels. And if that's one of our contextual schools, that's considered in our scoring for interview. And if you're successful at interview, you'll get an offer which is 1 grade below our standard offer. So that would be AAB rather than 3 A's. And then if you have taken part in one of our widening participation schemes at the university, so one of the Pathways to Birmingham programmes, if you're on realising opportunities, or you've taken part in one of the widening participation programmes that's included in the scheme UKWP Med, then your contextual offer will be 2 grades below the standard offer, so that would be ABB. And I'd really recommend that you put some time aside over the summer holidays to really investigate what opportunities there are out there for you to get involved in widening participation schemes, and the contextual offers that go along with those, and anything else that might be on offer as well at the different universities that you're considering.
Anybody else want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned before that we offer ABB for those who've done our Access Leicester Medicine course or Realising Opportunities. We don't give contextual offers out with that, but what we will do on A-level results day, we'll prioritise those from lower performing schools. If we're given places to those who are near misses. So if they've just missed out on their A-level grades, then the contextual ones are prioritised.
One other thing I would want to address there, I'm not sure if Claire already replied by typing an answer to a couple of questions I went through before, was about UKWP Med, which is a programme through which I think it's currently 6 medical schools recognise each other's widening participation programmes. So if you've completed Keele Steps to Medicine, for example, you can apply on the basis of that to Birmingham, Brighton, Sussex, and several others, and get reduced offers from those other medical schools. But you need to know which schools are in the UKWP Med group.
Anything else to add about that one at all? No. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask. It never works too well, typing at the same time. Okay, so let's move on a little bit now. There was a lot of chat going on about the offer system. Could somebody just explain to the students how it is that you give out so many more offers than you have places? Can someone kind of unravel the mystery that is offer making in a succinct and simple way that exists? Any takers? Margaret.
I say the first thing we do is we get our crystal ball out and we give it a good shine and see where we're going this year.
And the government say the last second, no, it's all changed this year, so you've got to start all over again.
So we look at our conversion rates from previous years. So you can apply to 4 medical schools, and because we all kind of select in similar ways, it's likely that some people could get offers to all 4 schools that they've applied for. So we've got to make more offers because you're not going to all put us as your firm choice. So that's the first reason we need to make more offers. We've also got to have more offers accepted as firm when it comes to A-level results day, because sadly not everyone gets the A-level results that they'd hoped for. So we need to have more people that have accepted our offer as firm. Now, when it comes to you accepting your offer, you can either, you get 2 choices, and you accept one of them as your firm place and one of them as your insurance place. But because medical schools are all asking for much of a muchness, it's very rare for us to pick up people who've made us their insurance choice. So really, it's only the ones who've made us their firm choice that are likely to come to us. So I don't know if that explains it, or if anyone else can explain any differently.
It is a statistical thing. So we will go on historical patterns of conversion. We expect a certain proportion of people we make offers to accept them, and then a certain proportion of those to actually meet the conditions. So we work backwards from the number of places we've got and work out how many offers we need to make.
Brilliant. Okay, I think hopefully that's kind of cut off the queries about that one. Okay, so I think a really, really big topic this year, more than any other year, is work experience. Obviously, students in year 12 have had virtually no opportunity to have not even work experience, but any voluntary experience or anything. So advice, tips, suggestions, anything at all? Mandy, hand up.
So Medical Schools Council made clear recommendations to all the medical schools that we should not be expecting applicants to have in-person NHS work experience from the start of the COVID pandemic. So Nottingham and Lincoln are following that. We are not expecting applicants to have in-person work experience. There are many opportunities to reflect on what's happened in the NHS. The NHS has not been out of the news in the last 18 months. And, you know, appreciate that many people have had their own lives touched by COVID in one way or another through family circumstances or friends. And people will have been very, you know, thinking about it and reflecting about what's happened to them personally or their families, or documentaries or information that's been on the news. There are also very good virtual work experiences opportunities. There are links to them on Medical School Council website. There's a very good one on the Royal College of GPs website, and also Brighton and Sussex Medical School. So there are virtual work experience opportunities available. I think what's important is that students are thinking about what medicine is like as a career, and whether it's the right choice for them, whether it's what they want to do, and have a realistic idea of what medicine is like. You know, I love being a GP. That doesn't mean it's all easy. It's hard work, and certainly things have been very challenging through the last 18 months, but I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. But that's my choice, that's my career. And I think students need to be really sure that it's what they want to be doing, and have a realistic expectation of what life as doctors is going to be like.
We've never actually required work experience at Leicester, even pre-pandemic. It's not something we say we need to have. But what we find is that people who have done voluntary work often perform better at interview. But obviously we recognise that you're not really going to have had the opportunities that other years may have had. So we know that, and you're all in the same boat when it comes to that. There are still some volunteering opportunities out there. There are things you can do, and there are things you can do that exist now because of the pandemic that maybe you couldn't have done before. There's even things like, you know, being on the end of a telephone, contacting maybe people that are elderly, lonely, etc. These kind of things, you can get involved in some things. We've never ever required any shadowing, and we kind of think that shadowing's of benefit for you to help you know about the career, but doesn't tell us kind of what you're like and how suitable you are for the job. But as Mandy says, there's lots of different ways to find out about the career. And another thing, website I'd like to tell you about is the NHS Careers website. So if you go on there, it's not just got stuff about doctors, it's got stuff about all the different NHS careers as well. And then within the section on medicine, there's like videos that you can watch from people in different specialities to find out about their speciality and what it's like. So there's loads of ways of finding out information. It doesn't require you to know anyone in the profession. It doesn't require you to have a shadowing job. So just get out there and explore what is available to you.
Someone's asked a question whether they would they've had in-person work experience and whether that would be put aside this year because not everyone's had the opportunity to do it. I think the really important message is it's about reflecting on what you've learned through whatever activity you've done to find out more about the medical profession and more about your own skills that are relevant to working as a medical student and as a doctor. So it's great if you've had that opportunity, but you're no more advantaged or more disadvantaged than anyone else. And it's really about thinking about what you've learned from that.
I think that's a really valid point, actually, Claire, and that applies to any course you apply for. We always talk about the skills. So it's not just about what you've done, it's about the skills you've got from doing it and what you've learned from that experience. And that will apply to medicine as much as any other course as well. So reflect on what you've learned and what you've gained from whatever it is that you may have done. Can I jump to interviews, please? We've missed a step in personal statements we're going to come back to, but can we talk a little bit about the format of your interviews and anything in particular you're looking for candidates? We've had somebody who's asked a very large question about what's the ideal person you're looking for, which might be a little bit hard to articulate in a couple of minutes. But yeah, just interviews in general, if we could just talk through a little bit about what format they are. I've also had a question that relates to if they're going to be any different for those who are doing virtual interviews, are they different to how you would run your in-person interviews?
I can start off on that one. So I answered one of the questions, and I think the thing to make really clear to start with is that each university will be doing their interviews in one way for a type of candidate. So there won't be a mixture of some people coming for face-to-face and some people coming for an online interview, or hopefully that's not the intention, so that all students are treated in the same way. At Birmingham, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be doing online interviews, and there'll be 2 6-minute interview stations. And one of those stations will be a role play. And also you'll have to do a separate online calculation station. And that will take about 10 minutes. And that will be on a different date to your online interviews, which are that role play station and one other station. That is a different structure to the structure that we use when in previous years before the pandemic, where we've had face-to-face multiple mini interviews where we've had 6 stations, but we felt that it was fairer to adapt our interviews to this new structure because of the online nature of those and what's possible in those online interviews. So that will be how the interviews are going to be run at Birmingham this year.
Do you want me to go next? So I'd really recommend looking at Medical School Council website. They've got brilliant information on tips on how to do interviews, and particularly on both, on whether they're face-to-face or online. And they've produced very good information last year on online interviews for candidates and for teachers and careers advisors, as well as for us in medical schools. If they're online, it's really important to check your Wi-Fi and your IT equipment, and that you've got a quiet room to do the interview in. And if you haven't got that at home, think about asking at school if you can use facilities at school. So some very practical things to think about which are important. And as with any interview, it's important to practice. So if you're going to have an online interview, to practice talking online, and maybe a year on, we're all much more familiar with talking online, and it's something that many of us do every day. So there are very practical things to think about on that, in those kind of ways that make a difference and make it less nervous in terms of practicing. At Nottingham, the format of our MMI stations was very similar for when we do it face to face, and in fact we used our normal MMI scenarios. We just did them online, and we also included a role play station online.
So at Keele, our online interviews consist of 2 15-minute interviews, each with 2 interviewers. So you're assessed by 4 interviewers. There are a few medical schools that have pretty much moved their MMIs online. So the format of the interview is the same as it would be face-to-face, though obviously the atmosphere is different. 2 that are worth looking into quite carefully, because they're very different, are St George's and Imperial, because they do what they call asynchronous interviews, where they send you the questions and give you a time window in which to upload recordings of yourself answering them. So do look very carefully at what different medical schools do.
Brilliant.
So,
oh, sorry, go on, Margaret.
I was just going to say, so we ran a 5-station MMI online last year, but we're planning a 6-station MMI for the coming year. And that will be kind of replicated in our in-person interviews if we decide to do the in-person interviews. But what we found was that having the MMIs online actually worked really well last year. And we had very few who had problems with their connections. I would echo what Mandy said about try out your connection first and make sure you've got a good connection. The other thing that's really worth practicing is making sure you can talk to people with your camera on as well. So last year we offered practice sessions before the MMIs with our student ambassadors. So you logged on to the same platform that we used, and they kind of took you through so that you could see what it was like, make sure that your camera works, etc. So if you're offered any practice sessions, it's really worthwhile going on to those practice sessions. That makes a huge difference. So yeah, we're trying to replicate our MMIs as closely as we can to what we do in person. And it worked last year, albeit that we had fewer stations, but I think we're aiming for 6 this year. Things are still being planned, I have to say.
As a follow-up then, any particular things they can do to prepare for interviews? I've had one question said, what are you going to be asked, which is going to be different depending on what kind of interview it's going to be. And obviously there'll be a whole array of things, but is there anything in particular that students can do to prepare? Obviously we've talked about the online, the tech side of things, but what about in terms of the actual content? Is there anything they should be revising? Is there anything you'd recommend sort of reading or anything for them? What can they do to get into that interview fully prepared for it?
Definitely look at the website and any information you're sent from the medical schools that you've applied to and you're going to be interviewed by. So there's a lot of information on our website. It even tells you the things that we're looking for at interview, and your letter, your invite letter will tell you what we're looking for as well. There's at Leicester, we ask you to prepare a little presentation about yourself. So that's something that you could practice doing. What we find is that those who've actually looked at the information that's provided do better. And there's no excuse for not looking at it because you're advised to in your letter. So yeah, just read what you're sent, look at the websites and make sure, because there is information on there about what the interviews are about, what we're looking for. And I'm sure that's the same for most medical schools.
Yeah, you're going to need to probably demonstrate some understanding of what the roles and responsibilities of the doctor are and what challenges you might face and how you might deal with them. The main thing I would say in terms of preparing is just getting used to talking and answering questions where you have to think about the answers. You should also have some awareness of what's going on in the world. You might get asked to discuss some topical issue, and there have been some fairly major health-related ones over the past year and a half. Just being used to engaging with people and discussing things like that is going to be the best preparation. Look out for little quirks, like at Sheffield, you are going to be asked what you know about Sheffield. Don't get caught out by that because a lot of people do.
Brilliant, thank you. So I think that's probably covered everything we need for interviews. So my apologies, we're going to go back a step on the application process now and talk a little bit about personal statements. Can you, first of all, just have a very quick yes or no, do you weight them in application process?
No, not at Birmingham.
No. No.
Only for a very small number who are borderline, if we've got, you know, some on the same score and a limited number of places for interview.
Brilliant. So I think that's going to answer about probably 20 of the questions that are still in the box.
Could you just say something about personal statements?
Yeah, please do.
So there are very few places that score them in selection. There are some that may filter on them, so they may exclude people because the personal statements are completely inappropriate. A few places will use them as a subject for interview questions. So it may be that one interviewer, for example, a senior personal statement, might ask questions based on it. The important thing is, even if it's not being scored, you still need to put effort into writing it, because it's where you actually summarize for yourself as much as for anybody else and for whoever's writing your reference, why it is you want to do medicine. And if you can't write a personal statement, you're not going to be able to answer questions in an interview.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to agree with that, aren't they? Is that even though it might not be something that's going to get you on an interview, actually writing it is a really important piece of work anyway, because it does allow you to reflect an awful lot of what you've done. And a lot of the questions you're going to be answering in an interview are based on your reflection. It's about those skills you've gained and what you've learned from doing certain things. So I think the personal statement is a really important bit of work, regardless of whether or not it's an essential requirement for getting onto a course. I think someone, apologize, I've forgotten who already, mentioned obviously about unless anyone have written anything completely inappropriate in a personal statement. Is there anything in particular that you'd be looking out for, which would go kind of red flag moment, that you would think, oh, no, that's definitely not for us? Obviously, other than the obvious common sense, I'm a human being type of things, is there anything else you can kind of pinpoint that would be oh, not sure about that one?
Well, there's some things like if a personal statement's been written for a different subject. So somebody asked in the Q&A if they want to write a personal statement for pharmacy, is that going to affect their applications for medicine? If the personal statement is looked at, then yes, it is. Because if you've written a personal statement for pharmacy and a medical school is reading it, you'll say, well, this person doesn't want to do medicine. So you need to be a bit careful there. Some schools of pharmacy don't particularly mind if your personal statement is written for medicine, some will. So you do need to check quite carefully before you choose where to apply to.
Mandy, did you have anything to add to that one?
I was going to say, in all the years of looking at personal statements, I haven't seen anything that would be a worry or a problem. Looked at thousands, we've never seen anything worrying, because people do think about it very carefully, and it's an important process to go through, thinking about why you want to apply and what your strengths and weaknesses are, and what you've learned along the way. So it's the process is very important, but I've never seen anything that would be worrying.
Just reassuring, I think, really, in the grand scheme of things.
If a candidate's we talked about extenuating circumstances earlier, and if they were thinking of mentioning those to the admissions tutors, normally those things would need to be done by the same deadline as the UCAS application deadline, so the 15th of October. But there's nothing to stop a student in their personal statement reflecting on those circumstances if it's relevant to their application to medicine. And also in the teacher reference, if the teacher refers to those extenuating circumstances as well. But you can't rely on that being the only place where extenuating circumstances are mentioned, either by your teacher or by yourself when you're applying. That must be done directly to the admissions tutors. But it can be helpful to also have that information there. It sort of provides additional evidence that those circumstances were in place before the application to medicine was made.
Excellent. I think that covers probably personal statements. I think it's quite a nice short one, really, how we do it. So I think that the last kind of main general area to talk about is Ucat. We had a session earlier in the week from Ucat themselves, which I think was really enlightening to the students, and obviously learning a little bit more about how it works and the bigger picture. There are, of course, lots and lots of questions about the scoring, about what scores a good score, what you're going to take to get in. They've had some time with their mentors on the summer school, and obviously they've learned a little bit more about how Leicester works. So we often, it's not to say the score, it's about the deciles. So they've been explained a little bit about that as well. But could you each just talk a little bit about Ucat, how it works for your institution, a little bit perhaps about the weighting of Ucat as well, and anything else? Apologies, my small child has just come back from nursery. I have headphones, so hopefully you shouldn't hear him, but he likes to see what's going on. So apologies in advance if that happens. But yeah, anything at all you can say about Ucat would be brilliant, I think, just to kind of sum up from your own institution's point of view. Mandy, we have a hand up, which is brilliant. We'll start with you.
I think the most important thing is to check each medical school's website, because each medical school will use Ucat slightly differently of the Ucat universities, and if they use BMAT, then check how they use BMAT. And things change from year to year, so you need to be looking at how it's being used in the current year. And I know that's hard work, but I guess you're hearing that from us, that it really is important to check where you're applying and each step of the way, the selection process. So we use Ucat, and as part of our selection for interview, we score the Ucat and we score Gcses, and we add the Gcse and Ucat score together. I'd really recommend that you look at the details on the website. It's impossible for us we don't have a fixed threshold. It's impossible to say ahead of time what score will get someone to interview. It varies every year. It depends on the Ucat, what's happening with Ucat. It depends what students who are applying to Nottingham get in Ucat, and because we add it to the Gcse, it varies tremendous every year. So I think certainly for Nottingham, it would be impossible to predict from previous years' data as to what UCAT score might, with the GCSE score, get someone through to interview. I think that's if a university has a fixed threshold for UCAT, that's a very different situation, but we don't. We just just to say, we don't take SJT band 4, and that's another thing to look out for. There's a lot of universities will not take you if you have an SJT band 4, a few will. So it's really important to check if you do get a band 4 in the SJT section.
On that, watch out also, because Manchester increasingly is favouring people as SJT is 2 or 1. So people with SJT band 3 applying to Manchester are treated less favourably, and they don't look at people with band 4.
I was just going to say, sorry, Gordon, you go.
I was just going to say how Keele uses the UCAT is we do have a fixed cut-off, so you have to be 2,280 or above and SJT band 3 or better. But then we use another way of selecting, so we require you to fill in the supplementary form about experiences you've had. There's going to be something somehow used to rank people to decide who gets interviews. So anywhere that doesn't require you to have a very high UCAT is going to require something else to select on.
So at Birmingham, it's similar to Nottingham. So it's a balance between the UCAT score, so that the verbal reasoning, decision making, quantitative reasoning, and abstract reasoning, the score for that, and GCSE scores. And so 45% of the interview score comes from GCSEs and 35% from UCAT. And then the balance comes from contextual factors. And then we use the SJT band score after interview to determine the final result of whether you're going to be made an offer or not. So alongside those interview stations, that's when we look at the SJT score. Just to say a little bit about preparing for UCAT, I'm sure that Ucat told you about the resources on their website. I'd really encourage you to look at those really carefully and think about planning how you're going to do your preparation for your UCAT. So, you know, plan out a timetable, think about when you're going to do what, when you're going to take advantage of those mock exams that they've got on there, and really practice them as if they were real. The biggest limitation on the UCAT is time, so you really need to have practiced how you're going to approach doing the UCAT when you actually sit it. But also the other thing to really pay attention to is whether or not you're eligible for a bursary, because some universities will look at whether you've applied for and have a UCAT bursary as part of their contextual data that they use to make invitations to interview, and also then when they're making offers. So do have a look at the UCAT website, see whether you're eligible for the bursary. If you are, then make sure you apply for it, because it's worth more than just getting that bursary for the UCAT. So bit more investigation to do there. And just very quickly to add at the end, as Mandy said, we keep saying do the research, look at the websites. The students that are most successful in their applications to Birmingham, to universities, medical schools in general, are the ones that are really motivated and really do put in the hard work to find out all of this information and then really apply all of the advice that they've been given. So it is hard work, but also studying medicine is hard work. So it's actually a really good tester to see whether you're going to be suited to studying medicine at university.
Yeah, so I just echo what Claire said about the applying for the bursary, because it's one of the contextual flags that we look at when we're selecting for interview. So we will go lower down on the scores selecting for interview if you've got contextual flags, and that UCAT bursary is a simple one for us to use because it's in a spreadsheet. So it's a good one to have. Do apply for the bursary if you're eligible for it. At Leicester, UCAT counts for 50% of your score, so we're scoring on GCSEs and UCAT, and it's just a 50-50 split. And like Mandy said, we can't say what UCAT score you would need because it's combining it with the GCSE. So if you've got a good GCSE score, you can get away with a lower UCAT score. And we use the total UCAT score from the 4 subtests. We put them together, use the total. And as with the others, we won't accept you if you've got an SJT band 4, and we look at that prior to interview. So you wouldn't get to interview if you've got an SJT band 4, and then we don't use the SJT after that. If you've got a band 3, it doesn't make any difference to a band 1. I think that covers everything.
Brilliant. Mandy, if you have something to say, hold on for 1 second for me, just to say we've got quite a lot of questions now in the Q&A panel from individual institutions. So if you're okay to have a flick through there, and if you're able to answer any of the ones for your individual institution, that would be brilliant. Mandy, do you want to add anything on to the Ucat chat there at all?
I think I said some, no, not really. Again, I'd really recommend the Ucat website. And you need to check wherever you're applying to see how each medical school is using Ucat. There's a lot of questions about Nottingham and Lincoln. I've tried to answer some of them in the chat, just to say I'm trying to do that as well.
Feel free to quickly say it if you want, and I can get rid of the rest of the questions. Are they different? Are they the same?
So
are they separate applications?
There's been a lot of questions about whether it's the same. If you want to apply to Lincoln and Nottingham, you can. That would be 2 Gcse places. So you can apply to both, either the 2 5-year courses or the 2 6-year courses. The course structure is very much the same. The application criteria are the same. And the interview process is the same.
Actually, Mandy, as well, while you're on, a couple of questions around your scoring. So if you don't look at predicted grades, what do you look at? And then someone followed up by saying, because they're not looked at, does it matter if you don't meet the 3 A's predicted, but get 3 A's on results day?
So we are scoring GCSEs and Ucat to select for interview, and that's what we'll be looking at to select for interview. And you need to meet the minimum requirements for GCSEs and not have an SJT band 4 in order to meet for the course requirements. In terms of the offer you'll be given, if you're successful at interview, then it will be 3 A's for the 5-year course, or a contextual offer of 2 A's and a B. If you meet the contextual criteria, or 2 B's and a C for the 6-year courses. So the offer, you'll have to meet the conditions of your offer on A-level results day to be awarded a place.
Fabulous. Hope that's cleared that up for everyone about how Nottingham will actually make offers without using A-levels. Can we talk equivalencies? So do you accept GCSE equivalent for medicine foundation year? So this individual has English GCSE, Maths level 2 functional skills equivalent to grade 4 GCSE, and a CTEC, a CTEC level 2 in science.
I think very specific questions like that, I'd always encourage applicants to send an inquiry in before they apply to each university, because it needs checking, and they need to have the written response as to whether they meet the specific requirements of the course. So I always encourage students to submit an inquiry form to our inquiries team if it's very specific like that.
Yeah, I mean, we accept equivalents to GCSEs, but I couldn't say whether they're equivalent to our GCSEs. You would have to write in, but the same goes for international students who maybe haven't done GCSEs. We'll say to them, you know, to send us in what you've done at the equivalent stage of GCSEs, and then we look at it to assess equivalence. But we wouldn't say on a forum like this what we think is equivalent.
Perfect, thank you. Again, I'm just going to pick off a couple of random questions now. So this could be anywhere for you all to go. If you meet the requirements for foundation course, but think you're still able to get AAA, would you recommend applying for the normal 5-year course or foundation course, or a mix of the two? I think the mix of the two is a great question, and one we've actually not covered yet. But if students are looking at obviously the two, what would you recommend in terms of application? Would you recommend applying for just the one, or do you recommend doing foundation and the normal to kind of to gain traction?
Oh gosh, that's a difficult question actually. So at Leicester we do sometimes move people between the 2 courses. but it's not guaranteed. So occasionally we've had people who come A-level results day have applied for our medicine with foundation year and get 3 A's at A-level, and we move them across to the A100 course. But we wouldn't do that if their interview score was lower. They've got to have met all the criteria for the A100 course, for the 5-year course, to be allowed to transfer. Sometimes we transfer people the other way as well. And sometimes we have people who apply for both courses because they're not sure which one is right for them. And then we'll give them a single interview and keep open their options. If you know that you've got, it looks like you're going to get what's needed for the 5-year course, it's probably wise to apply for that, because you don't want to be stuck on a 6-year course, having got 3 A's at A-level and having to do that extra foundation year. You'll probably find that, you know, you can't really engage that well with it because you're maybe above the level for that. So I would say if you think you've got what it takes for the 5-year course, apply to that. If you happen to fall short and meet all our widening access criteria and all the different criteria for the foundation course, then it's possible for us to shift you. It isn't guaranteed. It kind of depends on numbers on results day. I don't know if that's a useful answer or not.
I think that's a very good answer, Margaret, and I think that's very wise, and I would have said similar.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, I think I'm going to do a couple more. I think Sarah's got to leave. I think Gordon's kind of run off as well, so we are at 4:30. So if you are okay, should we pick a couple more questions and then leave it there? Does that work for the 3 of you?
Works for me.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so I'm trying to pick out the questions that are going to be the most open to most people, which is it's getting few of them now. It's fair to say they're a little bit more specialised. But can we just talk about the difference between BMAT and Ucat? Someone's asked, is it risky to apply for 3 BMAT universities rather than going for a mix of BMAT and Ucat unis?
They're very different exams, and I think you need to look at them and carefully think about what you think you're going to do better in, what suits you best in terms of the exam and the content. And again, there's lots of useful information on the BMAT website as well. And practice as tests. So I think it's an important decision to be thinking about, very important, and trying to work out what for each student what they think the best bet is for them in terms of the exam.
And I don't know if it's still the same, but it certainly used to be that the main BMAT sit, you wouldn't get your results until after you've put your application in. So just be aware of that. You're putting an application into university when you don't know what your BMAT result is. So it's a choice you've got to make, having looked closely at what's involved in BMAT and the university is asking for it.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm just having a quick scroll through to anything that's relevant to everybody. I think most questions now are very specific to individual institutions. Obviously, what I will say is we have answered probably over 300 questions in the last hour and a half. A lot of those Sarah's been typing furiously for behind the scenes, but also our panel have answered an awful lot of questions. I fully appreciate and apologise for those we've not gotten around to. If you do still have questions remaining, please do feel free to email us at summerschool@le.ac.uk, and we can obviously forward them on to the relevant institution if need be. But I think all the panelists would agree that going away and doing your own research is really, really important. Every university is different, both in terms of the courses they offer, but also how you get onto them. They all have different weightings for different parts of them. They'll have different kind of entry requirements. So please do go away and do your own research. Have a look at the course requirements. And if you have got questions or you've got circumstances that perhaps a little bit unusual or very specific to you, don't be afraid to get in touch with the institution. I think everybody has individual medical school email addresses, so please do email the team. They are so friendly and they are so happy to hear from students who ask the questions in advance rather than leaving it to an application form and saying, oh, by the way, at the end of it. So do get in touch, do ask questions, and don't be afraid to kind of go, oh, I'm not sure about this, how does it work? That's kind of what we're here for at the end of the day. That's our job, is to make sure that everything is as clear as it can be. University websites are a wealth of information, so please do use them. If things aren't clear, drop us an email. Right, I think what we'll do is final words. So Margaret, is there anything you'd kind of like to finish off with for our group of students?
Yeah, we've really focused on admissions, as an admissions tutor panel would do, but I'd also encourage you to look at the different courses that are available and to visit the universities once you're able to. And think, you know, actual open days are starting up again. We've got one in September, October, and then March and June. So try to get to open days and look at the actual course as well to see if you think you would enjoy it there. It's not all about meeting the criteria, it's where you would feel happy as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Margaret has said. This is 5 or 6 years of your life. It's really important that you're happy where you're going to be. And if you've got interests outside medicine, they're really important to be able to carry them on, whether that is sport, music, volunteering, you know, whatever it might be. It's really important to have interests outside your academic studies as well. So that's an important thing to take into consideration. And, you know, think about practical things like how far away from home you want to be and how you're going to get to and from university, and, you know, where the university is. Those are really important, as well as, obviously, as we've been focusing on, knowing what the academic criteria are. We have run 3 in-person open days at Nottingham, and I have really enjoyed them. It's been really great to be able to talk to people again and have those really important individual conversations with students and, you know, maybe their families, if their families come with them. So, you know, I've been really grateful for that opportunity, and I'm sure, you know, for the other admissions tutors, you know, they'll be wanting to do the same when their universities are able to allow that opportunity to happen.
Yeah, so I'll finish off by saying good luck. As you've heard today, it's probably going to be some hard work finding out all the information that you need, but if you persevere, then I'm sure you'll be able to make a really strong application. Just echo what Mandy said about visiting the universities that you're thinking of applying to. It's a great opportunity to talk to students that are already studying there, and that will give you a really good insight into what it's actually like studying at that particular medical school. And I think, you know, it's definitely a feeling you get when you visit the university where you really want to be. So I'd really encourage you to do that. And at Birmingham, we've got open days coming up in September and October. So if it's on the landing page of our website, if you want to book onto those, and you get the opportunity to speak to staff and students at those events. And the other thing that I think is you know, a really useful thing to do is if you can find someone else at your school or college in the same year as you, or if you're in year 12, in year 13, find some other people that are applying for courses that interview. Doesn't have to be medicine, you know, some dentistry courses interview, some teacher education courses, social work, physiotherapy, they all interview. Get together every week and just talk about what's in the news, you know, test each other with just questions you make up. It doesn't really matter what it is, but just get as much practice as you can about talking out loud to other people about your experiences, what you've learned from those and how those are relevant to studying medicine. And again, good luck, and hopefully we'll see some of you at Birmingham, Nottingham, or Leicester, and indeed Kiel. Gordon's had to fly off, but you know, we're really, really happy to welcome any students to the universities.
Yeah. I would say we were hoping to have someone from Aston here as well, but she hasn't managed. So yeah, do look into Aston as well as another possible alternative, and good luck.
Can I ask one final thing? Hopefully it should be a relatively quick question. For those students transferring from a different course, say in bioscience in year 1, those going on to graduate medicine, do they still need to take the Ucat?
Yes.
Oh, Mandy, we've done so well.
For graduate entry medicine at Nottingham, it's the GAMSAT. So not Ucat, not BMAT, it's GAMSAT. But obviously that will be a bit further down the line. It's a different sort of test that we use. But there is still an entry test of some description. I think that was the main thing.
Yeah, and at Birmingham for the graduate entry, it's Ucat.
Perfect. Well, thank you all very much. Mandy, Claire, Margaret, thank you very much for your time. I think you all deserve to go and have a nice cup of tea or another drink of your choosing after that last session. If it's okay with the three of you to hang on just for 5 minutes, just in case there's any questions you can answer in the chat, that would be brilliant. But everybody, thank you so much for coming. As I said, if we haven't got your questions, I do apologise, but we have done our absolute best to answer as many as we can. But do email us, and obviously we will pass any questions on that we need to Claire, Mandy and Gordon as well, should it be required. So thank you for coming. Mandy, Claire, Margaret, if you have got time to answer a couple of questions, anything to you, that'd be fantastic. But thank you very much, everyone. It's been much appreciated and hopefully very useful for students as well. So thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
My chat seems to have frozen.
My whole thing is just frozen a couple of times then.
Yeah.
I think I've answered all the Birmingham questions.
Perfect.
So I shall pop off now and get my cup of tea.
Thanks ever so much, Claire, for your time.
And thank you, Nicola. It was really well chaired. That was a really good session.
Yeah, thanks.
Good to see you, Margaret. Hopefully see you soon.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks
Take
very
care.
much for
Bye.
coming. See you. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.